Introduction. There's one thing that has the power to ruin our relationships, cloud our judgment, and take away our inner peace: anger. But here's the truth: anger is not the enemy. The problem is how we choose to handle it. Anger is rarely about what appears on the surface. It often masks something deeper, something unresolved, something painful, or something we feel powerless over. We tend to believe that we are angry because of a specific event. Someone cut us off in traffic, a coworker disrespected us, or a friend didn't respond to our message. But the truth is, anger is not just a reaction to the present moment. It is a response influenced by past experiences, unhealed wounds, and deeply ingrained beliefs. Think about the last time you felt truly frustrated. Was it really about the situation at hand, or was there something deeper fueling that emotion? Often our anger is a symptom of something unaddressed within us. It could be an old resentment, a past disappointment, or a fear that has yet to be acknowledged. If you find yourself constantly irritated by small things, chances are the real issue is not what's happening now, it's what has been building inside you over time. One of the most common hidden causes of anger is the feeling of powerlessness. When we feel like we are not in control of a situation, we react with frustration. This is why people get angry in traffic. They cannot control the flow of cars, and the feeling of helplessness turns into rage. It's why people lash out when they feel unheard in a conversation. They fear that their voice doesn't matter. If you trace your anger back to its source, you will often find an unmet need, a broken expectation, or a fear of losing control. Another major driver of anger is unresolved pain. Many people carry emotional wounds from childhood, past relationships, or previous failures. If someone felt neglected or unappreciated growing up, they may become overly sensitive to rejection as an adult. A seemingly small slight, like a friend canceling plans, can trigger deep feelings of unworthiness. What looks like an overreaction is actually a defense mechanism built from years of emotional conditioning. The anger in these situations is not about the present moment, it is about every similar moment that has gone unhealed. Sometimes anger arises from a conflict between our expectations and reality. We expect people to treat us with respect, but they don't. We expect things to go as planned, but they don't. We expect fairness, but life isn't always fair. The greater the gap between what we expect and what actually happens, the greater the frustration we feel. This is why letting go of rigid expectations can significantly reduce anger. When we accept that people will not always behave the way we want, that setbacks are a part of life, and that perfection is an illusion, we become less reactive and more at peace. In some cases, anger is a cover for deeper emotions like sadness, disappointment, or insecurity. Many people find it easier to express anger than to admit they are hurt. Anger makes us feel strong, while sadness makes us feel vulnerable. If someone criticizes our work, we may get defensive instead of acknowledging the fear of not being good enough. If a loved one lets us down, we may lash out instead of admitting that we feel abandoned. This is why self-awareness is key. When we understand the true emotion behind our anger, we can address the root cause instead of just managing the symptom. Understanding where our anger comes from is the first step to letting go of it. Instead of reacting impulsively, we can pause and ask ourselves, what is this anger really about? What is it trying to tell me? When we dig deep enough, we often find that anger is not the problem, it is a signal pointing to something that needs healing. By identifying the true trigger, we give ourselves the power to respond with clarity, not just emotion. When faced with frustration or anger, our first instinct is often to react immediately. This reaction is usually emotional, impulsive, and unfiltered. We snap at a colleague, send an angry text, or say something we later regret. But reacting emotionally rarely leads to a positive outcome. It often escalates the situation, damages relationships, and leaves us feeling worse. Instead of reacting out of emotion, we must train ourselves to pause, analyze, and respond in a way that aligns with our values and long-term goals. The difference between reacting and responding is the difference between impulse and intention. A reaction is automatic and often driven by past experiences, insecurities, or unresolved emotions. If someone insults us, we might instinctively fire back with an insult of our own. If someone criticizes our work, we might immediately get defensive. But in both cases, we are not acting with awareness. We are simply allowing our emotions to take control. When we react like this, we give power to the situation and let external events dictate our behavior. A response, on the other hand, is intentional. It requires us to pause, reflect, and choose our words and actions carefully. Instead of reacting in the heat of the moment, we take a step back and assess what is really happening. We ask ourselves, is this worth my energy? What is the best way to handle this? Will my response bring a positive outcome or make things worse? By taking this extra moment to think, we shift from being controlled by our emotions to being in control of them. One of the most powerful tools for making this shift is the ability to pause. When we feel anger or frustration rising, the best thing we can do is stop and take a deep breath. This small act interrupts the automatic reaction and gives us a moment to reset. Science shows that when we pause and breathe, we activate the rational part of our brain instead of the emotional, reactive part. This simple habit can mean the difference between an argument spiraling out of control and a conversation staying productive. Beyond pausing, we must also analyze the situation objectively. Often we assume the worst intentions behind people's actions. If someone cuts us off in traffic, we assume they are rude or selfish. If a coworker gives us negative feedback, we assume they are attacking us. But what if there is another explanation? What if the driver was rushing to an emergency? What if the coworker was simply trying to help us improve? By questioning our initial assumptions, we open the door to a more rational, thoughtful response. Another key to shifting from reaction to response is aligning our behavior with our values. When we act impulsively, we often say or do things that go against who we truly want to be. If we value kindness, reacting with harsh words contradicts that. If we value patience, snapping at someone does not reflect that. Before responding, we must ask ourselves, what kind of person do I want to be in this moment? When we respond in a way that reflects our values, we not only handle the situation better, but we also feel better about ourselves. Training ourselves to respond instead of react takes practice. In the beginning, we may still slip into old habits of reacting emotionally, but over time, as we build awareness and self-control, we gain the ability to handle situations with calmness and clarity. The goal is not to suppress our emotions, but to manage them in a way that leads to better outcomes. By making this shift, we reclaim our power and choose responses that lead to growth, understanding, and peace. Many people spend their lives trying to control things that are simply beyond their power. They hold on to past mistakes, dwell on what others think of them, or get frustrated over circumstances they cannot change. But the more we try to control what is uncontrollable, the more exhausted and frustrated we become. Life is filled with uncertainties, unexpected changes, and people who won't always act the way we want them to. The key to emotional freedom is learning to differentiate between what is within our control and what is not, and then making the conscious decision to let go of the rest. Holding on to things we cannot change is like carrying unnecessary weight. Imagine walking through life with a heavy backpack filled with every mistake you've ever made, every person who has ever wronged you, and every situation that didn't go your way. The longer you carry it, the heavier it becomes. But what if you could set it down? What if you could remove the things that are no longer serving you? The moment you decide to release what isn't yours to carry, you begin to feel lighter, freer, and more at peace. One of the most common things people struggle to control is other people's opinions and actions. We often worry about what others think, how they perceive us, or whether they approve of our choices. But no matter how much effort we put into trying to control the perceptions of others, we never truly can. People see the world through their own experiences, beliefs, and biases. Some will like us, some won't. Some will support us, others won't. Instead of trying to control how others feel, we must focus on being true to ourselves. Another area where people waste their energy is in trying to change the past. Regret is a heavy burden, but no amount of wishing or replaying past events can alter what has already happened. We often ask ourselves, what if I had done things differently? But the past cannot be rewritten. The only thing we can control is what we learn from it and how we move forward. Letting go of the past does not mean ignoring it. It means accepting it, taking the lessons, and freeing ourselves from the weight of regret. Similarly, the future is full of unknowns, and many people get stuck in the habit of worrying about things that haven't even happened yet. While it's important to plan and prepare, excessive worrying does nothing but drain our energy. No matter how much we try to control every outcome, life will always have surprises. The healthiest approach is to focus on what we can do in the present moment because that is where our true power lies. Releasing what we cannot control is not an act of giving up, it is an act of wisdom. It is recognizing that our energy is best spent on things we can influence, like our attitude, our choices, and our actions. When we stop trying to control everything, we free ourselves from unnecessary stress and open the door to a more peaceful and fulfilling life. The more we focus on what we can change and let go of what we can't, the stronger and more resilient we become. Frustration is often the result of seeing a situation from only one angle, our own. When something doesn't go our way, we tend to interpret it through the lens of our expectations, experiences, and emotions. If we believe that things should happen in a certain way, any deviation from that belief creates resistance within us. However, the way we see a situation is not always the full picture. The moment we shift our perspective, our emotions begin to change and we open ourselves up to new possibilities. Imagine being stuck in traffic, late for an important meeting. The immediate reaction is frustration, maybe even anger. The situation feels unfair and we start blaming the traffic, the city, or even ourselves for not leaving earlier. But what if we shifted our perspective? What if we saw this as an opportunity to listen to an inspiring podcast, reflect on our goals, or simply practice patience? The traffic itself hasn't changed, but our perception of it has. And with that shift in perspective comes a shift in emotion, from anger to acceptance, from frustration to calm. The same principle applies in our interactions with people. If a friend cancels plans at the last minute, our initial reaction might be disappointment or irritation. We may assume they don't value our time or respect our friendship. But what if we considered another perspective? What if they had a rough day and needed rest? What if an emergency came up? What if their decision had nothing to do with us at all? When we broaden our perspective, we realize that not everything is personal. Most of the time, people are acting based on their own struggles and circumstances, not out of a desire to frustrate us. In moments of failure or setback, perspective becomes even more powerful. When we fail at something, our instinct is to view it as a negative experience, a reflection of our shortcomings. We feel defeated, embarrassed, or even hopeless. But what if we saw failure as a lesson instead of a loss? Every successful person has faced setbacks, but what separates them is their perspective. Instead of seeing failure as a dead end, they see it as feedback, a guide that shows them what needs to be improved. The situation remains the same, but the way they interpret it changes, and that shift in thinking transforms their emotions from despair to determination. Sometimes, frustration comes from feeling stuck, as if there are no solutions to our problems. But that's often because we are looking at the problem in only one way. When we change our perspective, new solutions emerge. A financial struggle might feel overwhelming until we step back and see creative ways to cut expenses or generate income. A conflict at work might seem impossible to resolve until we consider the other person's point of view and find common ground. The ability to shift perspectives allows us to see doors where we once saw walls. Life is unpredictable and we will always encounter situations that challenge us. But our emotions are not just a result of circumstances, they are a result of how we perceive those circumstances. The more we practice looking at things from different angles, the more control we gain over our emotions. A shift in perspective doesn't change reality, but it changes our experience of it. And sometimes that small change is all we need to turn frustration into clarity, struggle into growth, and setbacks into new beginnings. Anger is one of the most powerful emotions we experience. It has the potential to destroy, to divide, and to create chaos in our lives. But anger is not inherently bad. It is energy, raw, intense, and forceful. Like fire, it can either burn everything in its path or be harnessed to generate light and warmth. The key is learning how to use anger as fuel rather than allowing it to consume us from within. When anger is left unchecked, it leads to impulsive reactions that often create more harm than good. Harsh words spoken in the heat of the moment can damage relationships beyond repair. Anger-driven decisions made without thought can lead to regret. Physically, prolonged anger can take a toll on the body, increasing stress, raising blood pressure, and weakening the immune system. It becomes a fire that burns within, draining energy and leaving destruction in its wake. But what if, instead of allowing anger to control us, we used it as motivation to drive us forward? Anger often arises when we feel a deep sense of injustice, when we experience failure, or when we feel misunderstood. In these moments, instead of reacting emotionally, we can channel that energy into something productive. History has shown that some of the greatest movements, innovations, and personal transformations were fueled by anger. People who were told they weren't good enough used their frustration as motivation to succeed. Those who faced discrimination used their anger to fight for justice. Entrepreneurs who were doubted used their anger to prove the world wrong. The difference is in how the energy is directed, toward destruction or toward progress. Using anger as fuel requires self-awareness. When we feel that rush of frustration, we need to pause and ask, what is this anger trying to tell me? Often it points to something deeper, a passion, a value being challenged, or an area where we need to grow. If we can identify the root cause, we can redirect that energy into something meaningful. If anger comes from feeling powerless in a situation, we can use it as motivation to take action and regain control. If it comes from rejection, we can use it as fuel to improve and push forward. The key is to shift the mindset from reacting to creating. Exercise, creative expression, and problem solving are all ways to convert anger into positive energy. Physical activity, whether through sports, running, or lifting weights, allows the body to release tension while transforming anger into strength. Creative outlets like writing, painting, or music provide a way to express emotions in a way that inspires rather than destroys. And problem solving, whether in business, relationships, or personal challenges, turns anger into determination, pushing us to find solutions instead of dwelling on frustration. Anger itself is not the enemy, it is our response to it that determines the outcome. When we allow anger to control us, it blinds us, weakens us, and holds us back. But when we take that same energy and use it constructively, it becomes a force that propels us forward. It is the difference between a fire that burns uncontrollably and one that is harnessed to create something powerful. Anger can be destructive, or it can be a catalyst for growth. The choice is ours. Frustration is often the result of rigid expectations of people, of situations, of life itself. We create a vision of how things should be, how people should act, and how events should unfold. When reality does not align with these expectations, we feel disappointed, upset, and even angry. But the problem is not reality itself. It is our attachment to how we think things should be. When we loosen our grip on these expectations and detach from our ego, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering and open the door to peace and clarity. The ego is that inner voice that constantly demands validation, recognition, and control. It wants to be right, it wants to be admired, and it wants things to go exactly as planned. When someone disrespects us, the ego takes it as a personal attack. When we don't receive the credit we believe we deserve, the ego feels insulted. When life throws unexpected obstacles in our path, the ego sees it as unfair. But the truth is, most frustrations are not caused by external events. They are caused by our attachment to an ideal that does not match reality. Think about a time when someone disappointed you. Maybe a friend didn't support you the way you expected, or a colleague didn't acknowledge your hard work. The frustration didn't come from their actions alone, but from the expectation that they should have acted differently. We assume people should treat us the way we treat them, that they should understand us the way we understand them. But people operate from their own perspectives, experiences, and limitations. Releasing the expectation that others will always behave the way we want allows us to move through life with less resentment and more understanding. Beyond people, we often place rigid expectations on life itself. We expect success to come quickly, for our plans to work out, for everything to fall into place on our timeline. When setbacks occur, we feel frustrated, as if we are being cheated out of what we deserve. But life does not operate on our terms. The more we resist what is happening, the more we suffer. However, when we accept that life unfolds in its own way and in its own time, we develop resilience. Detachment from rigid expectations does not mean giving up on our goals. It means releasing the emotional turmoil tied to the outcome. Detaching from ego also allows us to see challenges from a different perspective. When we fail, the ego tells us we are not good enough. When we are criticized, the ego tells us to defend ourselves. But if we let go of the need to prove ourselves, we can see failure as a lesson rather than a personal defeat. We can see criticism as an opportunity for growth rather than an attack on our worth. Ego wants to hold on to control, but real strength comes from releasing the need to control everything. When we learn to loosen our grip on expectations and detach from the demands of the ego, we create space for peace and clarity. Life becomes less about fighting against reality and more about flowing with it. Instead of being trapped by disappointment, we become adaptable. Instead of seeking validation, we find fulfillment from within. And instead of resisting what is, we embrace what can be. The less we hold on to rigid expectations, the more we free ourselves to experience life with openness, wisdom, and true inner strength. Silence is often misunderstood. Many see it as weakness, passivity, or avoidance, but in reality, silence is a powerful tool for maintaining inner peace, clarity, and control over any situation. Not every battle requires engagement, and not every provocation deserves a response. Sometimes the most strategic and wise thing we can do is remain silent, observe, and choose where to invest our energy. When emotions run high, the instinctive reaction is to defend, argue, or retaliate. Whether in personal relationships, workplace conflicts, or online debates, the need to respond immediately often leads to unnecessary escalation. Words spoken in anger cannot be taken back, and impulsive reactions can create more damage than the original issue. But when we practice the power of silence, we allow space for emotions to settle, for clarity to emerge, and for a more thoughtful response, if one is even needed at all. Silence is particularly effective in dealing with negativity. Some people thrive on conflict, looking for any opportunity to provoke a reaction. They criticize, insult, or manipulate in an attempt to draw others into their chaos. Engaging with such people only gives them power, but silence removes their fuel. When someone expects a fight but receives no reaction, their influence weakens. By refusing to respond, we protect our energy and deny them the satisfaction of controlling our emotions. In conversations and disagreements, silence also gives us the advantage of observation. When we speak too soon or too much, we may reveal unnecessary information, misunderstand the other person's intent, or allow emotions to dictate the conversation. But when we listen more and talk less, we gain insight into people's true intentions. Silence allows us to read between the lines, to notice body language, and to assess whether a response is even necessary. Often, what people say is not as important as what they don't say, and only through silence can we truly hear. Beyond conflict, silence is also a source of personal power and discipline. In a world filled with noise, social media, constant opinions, and endless distractions, those who can remain quiet and focused have an edge. Speaking less and observing more gives us control over our own thoughts and emotions. It prevents us from making rash decisions based on fleeting feelings. The ability to sit in silence, to reflect before speaking, and to embrace stillness is a mark of emotional intelligence and self-mastery. Practicing silence does not mean avoiding communication altogether. There are times when speaking up is necessary, when boundaries must be set, and when expressing our thoughts is essential. But the key is discernment, choosing when our words will serve a purpose and when silence will serve us better. Not every situation requires our input, not every argument deserves our attention, and not every insult or criticism warrants a reply. Silence, when used wisely, is a source of strength. It is not a sign of weakness, but of control. It keeps us from wasting energy on meaningless battles, helps us observe rather than react, and allows us to navigate life with greater clarity. In many cases, the most powerful statement we can make is no statement at all. The ability to remain silent when necessary is not just a skill, it is a strategy for maintaining peace, protecting our energy, and mastering our emotions. Tension, stress, and frustration build up in the mind and body like steam in a pressure cooker. If there is no release, that pressure eventually explodes in the form of anger, burnout, or emotional exhaustion. The key to maintaining balance is developing a personal release ritual, a deliberate practice that allows us to let go of built up negativity, reset our minds, and regain a sense of inner peace. The way we release tension determines whether we stay stuck in frustration or move forward with clarity and strength. One of the most effective ways to release built up stress is through deep breathing. The breath is directly connected to the nervous system, and when we take slow, controlled breaths, we signal to the brain that it is safe to relax. A simple practice like inhaling deeply for 4 seconds, holding for 4 seconds, and exhaling for 4 seconds can create an immediate sense of calm. When frustration rises, pausing to take a few deep breaths creates space between the emotion and the reaction, allowing us to respond with clarity instead of impulse. Journaling is another powerful tool for releasing emotions. Writing allows us to take the chaos in our minds and put it onto paper, giving our thoughts structure and clarity. When we write freely without judgment, we process emotions in a way that talking or thinking alone cannot achieve. A journaling ritual can be as simple as writing down what made us feel frustrated, how we reacted, and what we learned from the situation. Over time, this practice not only helps release negative emotions, but also builds self-awareness and emotional intelligence. Physical movement is one of the most natural ways to release tension. Exercise, whether it's running, lifting weights, yoga, or even a brisk walk, allows the body to discharge stress while producing endorphins, chemicals that promote a sense of well-being. Frustration is stored in the body, and movement helps shake it loose. Even a few minutes of stretching or a quick workout can shift our energy and change our emotional state. For some, a release ritual may involve engaging in a creative outlet. Painting, playing music, dancing, or even cooking can serve as a way to channel emotions into something constructive rather than destructive. Creativity has a way of transforming frustration into expression, turning raw emotion into something meaningful. It is not about skill or perfection, it is about giving the mind and body an avenue to process and release emotions in a way that feels natural. Another powerful release method is spending time in nature. Stepping outside, feeling the fresh air, and being in a natural setting has a grounding effect on the mind. The simple act of walking barefoot on grass, sitting by a body of water, or listening to the sounds of nature can bring a sense of calm. Nature reminds us that everything moves in cycles, that emotions come and go, and that we are part of something bigger than our immediate frustrations. The key to an effective release ritual is consistency. It is not something we do once when emotions are overwhelming. It is something we integrate into daily life. Just as we take time to eat, sleep, and take care of our physical health, we must also take time to release negative energy and reset our minds. Whether it's deep breathing, journaling, exercise, creativity, or connecting with nature, finding a healthy release ritual gives us control over our emotions, helping us move forward with clarity and peace. The energy we surround ourselves with has a direct impact on our emotions, mindset, and overall well-being. Just as a toxic environment can drain us, a peaceful environment can uplift and restore us. Many people underestimate how much their surroundings shape their emotional state. But the truth is, if we want to let go of anger and frustration, we must be intentional about who we spend time with, the spaces we inhabit, and the energy we allow into our lives. The people around us have a significant influence on our emotions. If we are constantly surrounded by negativity, whether it's gossip, conflict, complaining, or drama, it becomes nearly impossible to maintain a sense of peace. Negative energy is contagious, and being around people who thrive on chaos can slowly pull us into that same mindset. On the other hand, when we surround ourselves with individuals who exude calmness, wisdom, and positivity, we naturally absorb that energy. We begin to see life through a different lens, one that is rooted in balance rather than reactivity. It is important to set boundaries with people who consistently bring stress into our lives. This doesn't mean cutting off everyone who has problems, but it does mean being mindful of how much time and energy we invest in relationships that do not serve our peace. Not every argument requires our participation. Not every conflict needs our involvement. Choosing to step away from toxic conversations and relationships is a powerful act of self-care. Beyond people, our physical environment also plays a crucial role in shaping our emotions. A cluttered, chaotic space can contribute to a sense of stress and restlessness. When our surroundings are disorganized, our minds often feel the same way. Creating a peaceful space, whether it's at home, in the office, or even in a small personal corner, can help promote a sense of calm. Simple changes like soft lighting, clean spaces, soothing colors, and natural elements can transform an environment into one that supports relaxation and clarity. Nature is one of the greatest sources of peaceful energy. Spending time outdoors, whether in a park, by the ocean, or even in a quiet backyard, can have an immediate calming effect. The sounds of birds, the rustling of leaves, or the rhythmic waves of water help regulate emotions and bring a sense of inner stillness. Even if we can't always escape to nature, incorporating natural elements such as plants, sunlight, or even essential oils into our daily surroundings can help create an environment that nurtures peace. The type of content we consume also affects our emotional state. If we constantly engage with news, social media, or entertainment that fuels anger, frustration, and division, we feed those emotions within ourselves. Choosing to limit exposure to negativity and instead filling our minds with uplifting books, inspiring music, and meaningful conversations can shift our energy. The mind absorbs whatever we feed it, and being mindful of what we allow into our mental space is just as important as the people and places we surround ourselves with. Surrounding ourselves with peaceful energy is not just about avoiding negativity, it is about actively cultivating an environment that nurtures calmness, clarity, and emotional stability. The more we choose spaces, people, and experiences that support our well-being, the more we protect our peace and create a life that is not dictated by frustration, but shaped by intention. Letting go of anger and frustration is not about suppressing emotions or pretending negativity doesn't exist. It's about mastering our response to life's challenges, choosing inner peace over unnecessary battles, and creating an environment that nurtures growth rather than chaos. By understanding the root of our frustration, shifting from reaction to response, and focusing only on what we can control, we free ourselves from the weight of unnecessary stress. Changing our perspective allows us to see solutions instead of obstacles, while using anger as fuel rather than fire turns our emotions into a tool for progress rather than destruction. Detaching from ego and expectations liberates us from disappointment, and practicing silence helps us avoid conflicts that drain our energy. Developing a release ritual ensures that we process emotions in a healthy way instead of allowing them to build up and control us. Finally, surrounding ourselves with peaceful energy through people, environments, and habits creates a foundation of emotional resilience and stability. True power lies in our ability to regulate our emotions, to choose where we invest our energy, and to walk away from anything that does not serve our well-being. When we stop letting anger dictate our actions and frustration control our thoughts, we gain the freedom to live with clarity, purpose, and unshakable peace.